The massive crystalline dome of the Intergalactic Council's research division sparkled under the light of three suns. Inside, in a small cubicle buried among thousands of others, junior researcher Gray stared at his data screen with growing confusion. "This can't be right," he muttered, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he rechecked the numbers. As part of the standard pre-contact species assessment, he had been assigned to study Earth's historical records. What he found made no sense. Gray's thin fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up battle after battle, war after war. The pattern, or rather, the lack of one, became clearer with each new data point. His antennae twitched nervously as he compiled his findings. Unlike every other known sentient species in the galaxy, humans showed no biological or psychological markers for surrender response. Where other species had clear physiological reactions that triggered submission when faced with overwhelming odds, humans simply didn't. Senior researcher White, Gray called out, his voice quavering. "I think you need to see this." The older researcher floated over on her gravity pad, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. "What is it now, Gray?" "Found another species that enjoys fermenting their beverages." "No, ma'am. It's about Earth. Their historical records show something impossible." Gray pulled up a holographic display of the Battle of Thermopylae. "Look at this. 300 defenders against an army of thousands. Any rational species would have surrendered." "Perhaps their records are incomplete," White suggested, but her color was already shifting to a concerned purple. "That's what I thought at first." Gray switched to another display. "But it's everywhere in their history. Massive forces against tiny defenders, overwhelming odds, and instead of surrendering, they just fight harder." White's purple deepened to almost black. "Show me everything." For the next hour, they went through Earth's military history. The more they looked, the worse it got. Humans didn't just lack surrender responses, they seemed to draw strength from hopeless situations. Time and again, when any sensible species would have given up, humans dug in deeper. "This goes against everything we know about evolutionary psychology," White whispered. "Every species develops surrender mechanisms as a survival trait. It prevents needless deaths when defeat is certain. But humans, they never learned how." Gray finished. "They just keep fighting." White suddenly straightened up. "Computer, when is Earth projected to achieve FTL capability?" The AI's smooth voice responded, "Based on current technological progression, Earth will achieve faster than light travel in approximately 3 standard months." 3 months. White's exoskeleton rattled, a sign of extreme distress. "We need to convene the council. Now." Within hours, the emergency meeting chamber was filled with representatives from 50 different species. The room hummed with nervous energy as Gray presented his findings. "As you can see," he concluded, pointing to the final chart, "humans don't just lack surrender responses. They actively resist them. Their bodies release chemicals that enhance performance under extreme stress. They become more focused, more determined, and more dangerous the worse their situation becomes." An ancient council member, Ambassador Black, raised a gnarled appendage. "Surely they must have some limit, some point at which they accept defeat." Gray shook his head. "We found numerous accounts of single human soldiers fighting on despite mortal wounds, of tiny bands refusing to yield to armies, of defeated nations continuing to resist through underground movements. They have a saying, 'Where there's life, there's hope.' But they don't even stop when hope is gone." The chamber erupted in worried whispers. Council member Green's voice rose above the others. "And these humans will have faster than light travel in 3 months." "Yes," White confirmed. "They'll be able to reach council space." The chamber fell silent. Every species present had evolved from prey animals that learned to surrender when outmatched or predators that backed down when outgunned. The concept of a species that simply never learned to give up was terrifying. Finally, Ambassador Black spoke again. "Then we have 3 months to decide how to handle a species that cannot be intimidated, will not surrender, and doesn't know when they're beaten." May the stars help us all. Dr. Blue was the Council's most respected xenoanthropologist, known for understanding species that others found impossible to comprehend. When the Council gave him the human case, he thought it would be like any other assignment. He was wrong. His research pod, floating high above the Council's capital city, was covered wall to wall with human historical records. Physical books, digital displays, and holographic projections filled every surface. After 3 weeks of nonstop study, his blue scales had turned pale from stress. "Computer, play the human battle record again," he commanded, rubbing his tired eyes. The hologram flickered to life, showing a small island nation standing alone against a massive empire. "Fascinating," he muttered, making notes. Even when their major cities were burning, they didn't surrender. Instead, he checked his translation again. They said, "We shall fight on the beaches." Incredible. His assistant, Orange, entered with more data crystals. "Sir, I found something disturbing in their entertainment records." "More disturbing than their actual history?" Dr. Blue asked with a tired laugh. "They make games of their most desperate battles," Orange said, inserting a crystal into the viewer. "Not just games celebrating victories, but games about fights they lost. They call them last stands and treat them as great achievements." Dr. Blue's scales rippled with interest. "Show me." The holograms changed, displaying scenes from human entertainment. Small groups of soldiers fighting against impossible odds, civilians refusing to bow to invaders, lone heroes standing against armies. In every scene, the humans fought on despite certain defeat. "This explains so much," Dr. Blue whispered. "Other species accept defeat to survive and try again. Humans see fighting until the end as a victory in itself." A priority alert flashed across his screens. His heart sank as he read the message. Human ships had been detected approaching Council space. They were ahead of schedule. "Orange, help me prepare for the emergency Council session," he said, gathering his research materials. "They need to understand what we're dealing with." Hours later, Dr. Blue stood before the full Council, his scales now a stressed white color. "Distinguished members, my investigation has revealed something unprecedented. Humans don't just lack surrender responses. They turned hopeless situations into an art form." He played a series of historical recordings. "Look at their pattern when cornered. Other species retreat. Humans? They attack. The more desperate their situation, the more dangerous they become." Council member Red interrupted. "Surely there must be some records of humans surrendering." "Yes," Dr. Blue admitted, "but even their surrenders are different. They only surrender when they choose to, not when they're forced to. And even then, many continue fighting from hiding." He showed more records. "We found evidence that at least 3 advanced species tried to conquer Earth in its pre-industrial age. All 3 disappeared completely. No survivors, no records, nothing. Just human stories about fighting off invaders." The Council chamber grew colder as the implications sank in. An entire species that treated defeat as a temporary setback rather than a final outcome was unprecedented in galactic history. "There's more," Dr. Blue continued. "Humans have a concept called spite. When faced with certain defeat, they'll often choose actions that harm their enemy even if it doesn't help them win. No other known species does this." Just then, every screen in the chamber lit up with the same message. A human ship had broadcast its first transmission to Council space. The message was simple. "Hello, neighbor. Looking forward to meeting you." The Council members stared at each other in silence. The message seemed friendly enough, but Dr. Blue's research cast it in a different light. They were about to meet a species that had never learned the meaning of defeat. "We have 2 choices," Dr. Blue concluded. "Find a way to peacefully integrate humans into galactic society, or," he paused, his scales shifting to a worried gray, "risk finding out exactly how far humans will go when challenged." No one in the chamber asked what he meant. They had all seen the research. They all knew that impossible was just another word humans loved to prove wrong. The Grand Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every council species packed the circular room, their voices creating a storm of worried whispers. The central hologram showed a human ship, steadily moving closer to council space. Council Leader Purple stood at the center platform, trying to maintain order. "We must decide how to handle first contact with humans," she announced, her crystalline form glowing with stress patterns. "We have two main proposals to consider." On one side of the chamber stood Ambassador Green, leader of the containment faction. His metallic scales clinked as he moved to the speaker's position. "The evidence is clear," he declared. "Humans are too dangerous to allow free access to council space. We must contain them to their solar system." The chamber erupted in supportive clicks and hums, but not everyone agreed. Ambassador White, leader of the Alliance faction, floated forward on her gravity pad. "And how exactly do you plan to contain a species that doesn't understand the concept of giving up?" "We have superior technology," Green argued. "Our ships are faster, our weapons more advanced." "Did you not pay attention to Dr. Blue's research?" White interrupted. 3 advanced species tried to dominate Earth. All 3 vanished completely. "Do you want to be the 4th? The chamber fell silent. Dr. Blue, watching from his observation pod, pulled up another historical record on his datapad. "If I may," he called out, "I've discovered something relevant." All eyes turned to his projection. "We found ancient ruins on Earth's moon," he explained. "They belong to an advanced civilization that tried to set up a containment field around Earth 10,000 years ago. The ruins show signs of massive damage. The civilization's remains were found scattered across an asteroid belt." Ambassador Green's scales paled. "But they were just primitive humans then." "How?" "They built rockets out of primitive explosives," Dr. Blue explained. "When they couldn't reach the moon with their technology, they kept trying anyway. They literally strapped themselves to explosives and pointed them at space." The chamber burst into chaos. The idea of a species so determined that they'd risk blowing themselves up just to reach their goal was terrifying to the safety-minded council species. Suddenly, all screens in the chamber flashed red. A new message from the human ship appeared. "Request permission to establish diplomatic relations. We come seeking friendship and knowledge exchange." "They sound reasonable," Ambassador White pointed out. "Perhaps we're overreacting." Dr. Blue cleared his throat. "The message is diplomatic, yes, but our sensors show their ship is running combat drills while sending it. They're literally practicing warfare while asking for peace." "That's insane," someone shouted. "No," Dr. Blue corrected. "That's human. They have a saying: if you want peace, prepare for war." They're not being hostile. They're being human. Council Leader Purple raised her appendages for silence. "We must vote. Do we attempt to contain humanity, knowing it might lead to conflict? Or do we welcome them, knowing they might change everything about our society?" Before anyone could vote, another alert sounded. Archaeological teams had found something on a distant planet, evidence of a 4th species that had tried to invade Earth. The ruins contained a single warning, burned into indestructible metal: "Do not attempt to force humans to submit. They do not know how. They will not learn. They will never stop." Ambassador Green's faction quickly lost support after that. The vote was clear. The Council would attempt peaceful contact with humanity. "May I remind everyone," Council Leader Purple announced as the session ended, "that humans have a concept called friendship that seems just as intense as their inability to surrender. Perhaps we should focus on that." As the chamber emptied, Dr. Blue added one final note to his research. "Humans describe themselves as the most dangerous when cornered. The wisest course may be to ensure they never feel cornered. Instead, give them room to grow, and hope they grow toward us rather than against us." The human ship was now just days away from Council space. Soon, they would all learn if they'd made the right choice. The galaxy was about to change forever. The Council's diplomatic ship, Peaceful Dawn, waited at the designated meeting point, its iridescent hull reflecting starlight. Inside, the diplomatic team struggled to stay calm. Meeting humans for the first time was stressful enough. Meeting humans who didn't know how to surrender was terrifying. Head Diplomat Gold reviewed the contact protocols one last time. Remember, she told her team, no subtle threats, no shows of force. Humans don't respond to intimidation the way normal species do. The human ship appeared right on schedule. It was smaller than the Council vessel, darker in color, and bristling with what the sensors identified as both weapons and scientific equipment. The name Terra's Hope was painted on its side. They named their first contact vessel after Hope. Dr. Blue noted from his observer's position. That's very human of them. The human delegation consisted of 3 members who boarded through the connection tube. They wore simple blue uniforms without obvious weapons, but scanner readings showed their bodies were in peak physical condition. Natural weapons by Council standards. Welcome to Council space, Gold said, spreading her 4 arms in the traditional greeting of peace. We are honored to. This is amazing. The lead human interrupted, grinning widely. The sudden display of teeth made several Council members flinch. Sorry, but look at this ship. The artificial gravity feels completely different from ours. And your hull design, is that some kind of living metal? The Council team stared in confusion. According to protocol, first contact meetings were supposed to be formal, cautious affairs. Nobody had prepared them for enthusiasm. Yes, Gold managed to reply. The hull is partially organic, but perhaps we should focus on diplomatic. Organic hulls. That's brilliant. Another human was taking pictures with a small device. This could revolutionize our space engineering. Oh, but yes, sorry. Diplomacy first. Science later. The third human stepped forward with a more serious expression. We bring greetings from Earth and the United Human Nations. We're here to establish peaceful relations and hopefully join the galactic community. Gold relaxed slightly. This was more like the expected protocol. Of course. Let us proceed to the conference room 4. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Warning, the ship's AI announced. Human vessel is conducting high-energy weapons tests. The Council delegation froze in horror, but the humans didn't even look concerned. Oh, that's just standard procedure, the lead human explained cheerfully. Running combat drills helps our crew stay sharp. We can stop if it makes you uncomfortable. You're running combat drills during first contact? Gold asked weakly. Well, yeah. Better to be prepared, right? The human smiled again. But seriously, we'd love to learn about your culture. Maybe we could start with lunch. We brought some Earth foods to share. The next few hours were the strangest of Gold's diplomatic career. The humans switched effortlessly between discussing complex scientific theories and asking excited questions like children. They showed equal interest in Council art and Council weapon systems. They treated both topics with the same enthusiastic curiosity. During the cultural exchange presentation, one human raised a hand. These submission gestures you're showing us, what do they mean? They're how species show they're not a threat, Gold explained. How they acknowledge defeat or superior force. The humans exchanged confused looks. But why would you want to do that? To prevent unnecessary conflict, Gold said. To survive and try again later. The humans seemed genuinely puzzled. But if something's worth fighting for, one said, isn't it worth fighting for all the way? Dr. Blue, observing from the corner, made a note. Humans don't view defeat as a path to survival. They view survival as a path to continue fighting. As the meeting ended, the humans left with promises of future talks and trades. The moment they were gone, Gold collapsed into her gravity chair. How, she asked nobody in particular, do we handle a species that treats deadly weapons and artistic crafts with the same cheerful interest? Dr. Blue had an answer. We hope they stay friendly. Because if they don't, we've seen what happens to those who make humans feel threatened. The Terra's Hope disappeared into FTL travel, leaving the Council team to prepare their report. Somehow, they had to explain that humans were simultaneously more and less dangerous than anyone had imagined. 1 month after first contact, the Council's worst fears about humanity were proven right, just not in the way anyone expected. The Crimson Raiders, the most notorious pirate group in the galaxy, attacked humanity's first outer colony on Delta 7. They expected an easy victory. After all, every species surrendered when faced with overwhelming odds. The Raiders deployed 50 ships against the colony's 3 defensive vessels. Standard procedure was to demonstrate superior force, accept the colony's surrender, then loot everything valuable. "Attention human colony," the Raider commander broadcast. "You are outnumbered. Surrender now and..." The transmission was cut off as all 3 human ships accelerated directly toward the Raider fleet. In the Council Observation Center, alarms blared as they watched the battle unfold. "They're doing it wrong," shouted Monitor Yellow. "They're supposed to power down weapons and prepare for boarding." Instead, the human ships split up and drove straight into the heart of the Raider fleet. Their transmissions were picked up by Council observers. "Remember the Alamo. For Earth and Delta 7. Let's show these pirates how humans fight." The Council chamber watched in horror as the battle unfolded. The human ships took massive damage but refused to stop fighting. When one human ship lost its main weapons, it simply rammed the nearest Raider vessel. "This is madness," whispered Council Leader Purple, watching the feeds. "Their ships are falling apart. Why don't they give up?" Dr. Blue, now the Council's chief human expert, shook his head. "You're still thinking like a Council species. Look at their life pod readings." The scans showed something impossible. Human crew members with fatal injuries were still fighting. One ship's captain continued giving orders despite losing an arm. Engineers worked to keep weapons online even as they bled. "How are they still conscious?" asked Ambassador White. "Their medical readings show injuries that should have triggered automatic surrender responses." "Humans don't have surrender responses," Dr. Blue reminded her. "They have something called adrenaline instead. The closer to death they get, the harder they fight." The battle lasted 3 hours. By the end, 2 human ships were destroyed, and the third was barely functional. But 37 Raider ships were either destroyed or crippled. The remaining Raiders tried to retreat. That's when the colony revealed its surprise: hidden surface-to-space weapons. The fleeing Raiders found themselves caught between the remaining human ship and the colony's defenses. "Attention Raider fleet," the human transmission was clear and calm. "You have 2 choices: surrender or continue fighting." The Raiders immediately tried to surrender. There was just one problem. How do we accept their surrender?" the human captain asked the Council observation team. "We've never actually done this before. Do we need special forms or something?" The Council had to quickly send a diplomatic team to explain surrender protocols to the humans. It was the first time in galactic history that the winners of a battle had to be taught how to accept defeat from the losers. In the aftermath, Council Leader Purple called an emergency session. "We must discuss what happened today," she announced. "The humans did exactly what we feared," interrupted Ambassador Green. "They fought with impossible determination and demonstrated complete disregard for their own survival." "No," corrected Dr. Blue. "They fought to protect others. There's a difference. When the Raiders retreated, the humans let them surrender. They didn't pursue revenge." The Council chambers buzzed with discussion. The battle had revealed something new about humans. They weren't just unstoppable in defeat. They were merciful in victory. "Perhaps," suggested Council Leader Purple, "we've been looking at this wrong. We saw humans as dangerous because they never learned to surrender. But they never learned to abuse surrender either." Dr. Blue added a final note to his report. "Humans will fight to the death to protect others, but they'll also accept an enemy's surrender without question. They don't understand the concept of giving up, but they do understand the concept of second chances." The Crimson Raiders never attacked another human settlement. In fact, They never attacked anyone again. The story of the Battle of Delta 7 spread quickly through the galaxy, teaching everyone an important lesson. Never expect humans to surrender, but never fear surrendering to them either. 3 months after the Battle of Delta 7, the Council's scientific division made a breakthrough in understanding humans. It wasn't their technology or their tactics that made them unique. It was their evolutionary history. In the main research chamber, Dr. Blue presented his findings to the gathered council members. Behind him, a massive display showed the evolutionary trees of various species. "Look at every council species," he began, pointing to the display. "Whether predator or prey, all of us evolved surrender mechanisms. Prey species surrendered to live another day. Predator species surrendered to preserve hunting grounds. It was basic survival." He switched the display to human evolution. But humans, they evolved differently. They became persistence hunters. The chamber filled with confused murmurs. Council Leader Purple raised a hand. "What is a persistence hunter?" Instead of catching prey with speed or strength, Dr. Blue explained, humans would follow their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They didn't need to be the fastest or strongest. They just needed to never stop. The display showed ancient humans tracking animals across vast distances. Other species learned that surrendering meant survival. Humans learned that not giving up meant dinner. Ambassador White floated forward on her gravity pad. But surely they developed surrender responses later, during their wars. "No," Dr. Blue said, changing the display to show human battles throughout history. Their wars taught them the opposite. When humans surrendered, they lost everything. When they kept fighting, they sometimes won impossible victories. It reinforced their persistence. "This is why they're so bad at accepting surrender," added Research Chief Brown, joining the presentation. "Their brains never evolved the concept. To them, a fight has only two outcomes, victory or death. The idea of deliberately losing to survive makes no logical sense to their minds." The council chamber was silent as this information sank in. Finally, Ambassador Green spoke up. "So when we thought they were being suicidally brave, they were just being human," Dr. Blue finished. "They don't fight to win. They fight until they win. There's a crucial difference." Research Chief Brown activated another display, showing brain scans. "Look at their neural responses. When faced with impossible odds, their brains don't trigger fear or submission. They trigger something called determination instead. The worse things get, the more determined they become." "But what about the Battle of Delta 7? Asked Council Leader Purple. "They showed mercy to the surrendering raiders." Dr. Blue smiled. "Yes, that's the fascinating part. Humans don't understand surrender, but they understand choice. They don't accept defeat, but they accept when others choose to stop fighting. It's a subtle distinction that took us months to grasp." The display changed to show footage from the battle. The raiders expected the humans to give up when outgunned. Instead, the humans expected the raiders to keep fighting until death. Both species were surprised when the other didn't behave as expected. "So what do we do with this information?" Ambassador White asked. Research Chief Brown stepped forward. "We recommend full integration of humans into galactic society. Their inability to surrender isn't a flaw, it's an asset. They'll never give up on solving problems, never stop trying to improve, never abandon allies in need." Dr. Blue nodded in agreement. Their persistence hunting evolution also gave them incredible problem-solving skills. They don't just chase solutions, they chase them until they catch them. The Council voted unanimously to approve human integration into galactic society. As the session ended, Dr. Blue added one final note to his research. Humans never learned how to surrender because they were too busy learning how to succeed. In doing so, they may have become the most valuable allies any species could hope for. The new era of human council cooperation was about to begin. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone finally agreed, was a good thing. As they left the chamber, Ambassador Green had one last question. What happens if humans face a truly impossible situation? Dr. Blue's answer was simple. Humans don't believe in impossible situations. They just see them as challenges that haven't been overcome yet. And they'll keep trying until they find a way. That's what makes them human. 1 year after humans joined the Intergalactic Council, the galaxy had changed in ways no one expected. The Council's main meeting chamber, once a place of careful diplomatic words and subtle threats, now had a new sign on its wall. When faced with the impossible, ask a human. The change started when the Council appointed humans as peacekeepers in the notorious Shadow Sector, a region so dangerous that most species refused to patrol it. The humans not only accepted the assignment, they seemed excited about it. Are you sure about this? Council Leader Purple had asked the human commander. The Shadow Sector has destroyed 3 previous peacekeeping fleets. The commander just grinned. Challenge accepted. Within 6 months, piracy in the Shadow Sector dropped to 0. Not because the humans were better fighters, though they were impressively stubborn in battle, but because they did something no other species had tried. They talked to the pirates. Most pirates are just trying to survive, the human commander explained to the council. So we offered them jobs as legitimate traders and patrol crews. Those who refused, well, they discovered that humans are really, really good at catching people who don't want to be caught. Dr. Blue, watching from his observation post, added another note to his ever-growing human research. Humans don't just persist in combat, they persist in finding peaceful solutions too. The changes spread quickly. Other council species began studying human military doctrine, not for its tactics, but for its underlying philosophy. The human idea of training harder than you fight revolutionized council military preparation. You mean you practice fighting at full intensity? A council trainer had asked, shocked. Of course, the human instructor replied. If you're not ready to give everything in practice, you won't be ready to give everything when it matters. Even the council's scientific community was transformed. Human scientists approached impossible problems with the same stubborn determination they showed in battle. They didn't care if something had never been done before. That just meant they'd be the first to do it. When a deadly plague threatened a distant colony, the council was ready to quarantine the entire sector. The human medical team simply refused to accept that outcome. The cure is out there, the human doctor insisted. We'll find it. They worked for 30 straight days, taking stimulants to stay awake, trying combination after combination. When they finally found the cure, the council was amazed not by their success, but by the fact that failure had never seemed to be an option in their minds. One day, a young council member asked Dr. Blue, "Aren't you worried that humans will take over the council? They're so unstoppable." Dr. Blue smiled. That's the beautiful irony. Humans never learn to surrender, but they never learn to demand surrender either. They don't want to rule. They want to help. They don't want to be superior. They want everyone to become as persistent as they are. The proof came during the first joint military exercises. Human commanders spent more time teaching other species how to keep fighting than actually fighting. They seemed genuinely happy when other species began showing the same determination they did. Victory through persistence became a common phrase in council space. The humans had turned their greatest quirk into the galaxy's greatest strength. In the council archives, the original report about humans was updated one final time. The warning about their inability to surrender was still there, but now it had an addition. Humans never learned how to surrender. Instead, they learned how to inspire others to never give up. They don't know how to accept defeat, but they know how to teach victory. In doing so, they haven't just survived in our galaxy. They have helped it thrive. The final line, added by Dr. Blue himself, simply read, "The species that never learned to surrender has taught us all how to succeed." And in the council chambers, beneath the new sign about asking humans for help with impossible situations, someone had added a smaller note. But be prepared for their solution to involve either ridiculous persistence, strange innovation, or both, usually both. The galaxy had indeed changed forever, and it turned out that was exactly what the galaxy needed.